Hey everybody, I'm Pastor Nick McRae, and you're watching Helpful Hebrew, where we learn a new Hebrew word every day. For the past week or so, we've been learning the Shema, the great statement of faith of the people of Israel, which is found in Deuteronomy chapter 6. And so far, what we've learned is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. Keep these words. And today's word of the day is Devarim, which means words. Some interesting things about the word Devarim. It does mean words, like a written word or like a spoken word. It does mean that. It can also just mean a thing. Interestingly, so you could translate this as keep these things that you're being told. But what I think is maybe even a better way to describe what this is saying here in this verse is to keep these devarim, these words. It's not so much about those, the written words on the page or even the specific spoken words, but it's about a communication. In fact, this makes a lot more sense if we put it in the context of Deuteronomy chapter 6, where we find ourselves. In fact, just before this section of scripture, at the end of Deuteronomy chapter 5, we have the 10 commandments. And the 10 commandments, actually the Hebrew title for the 10 commandments is the 10 devarim, the 10 words. And so obviously we see that it's not just 10 words. We know that there's multiple words in each of the 10 commandments, right? But each of the 10 commandments is a communication from God. It's a message about the way that God desires for us to live, the way that God expects us to be in harmony with God and in harmony with each other. So it's these communications from God. And in fact, we can look all through Scripture and see that God over and over again will come to prophets, will come to all kinds of people in the Bible to speak to them and to communicate God's will and what God desires and God's love and sometimes even God's judgment. But the point being to communicate from God to people. And so, this is about God communicating with us. And another way to look at this that I think makes it even more powerful is if you look at that this sentence in your English Bible, it'll probably say something like "keep these words in your heart." But if you look at the Hebrew, it's really interesting because it doesn't say "keep these words." It just says these words will be in your heart. These communications will be in your heart. And so it's not as though it's like this optional thing that you can keep them or you cannot keep them, but it's a promise from God that these communications from God will be in your heart. They'll be inside you and they'll be with you. And I think that's very powerful. Just another little interesting tidbit about the word devarim is that so in Hebrew, if you're reading the book of Deuteronomy in Hebrew, it's not called Deuteronomy. The word Deuteronomy is actually a Greek word. It comes from Greek words, and it means a repetition of the law, kind of a retelling of the law, talking about retelling of Exodus, which comes earlier in the Bible. But it actually is called Devarim. So it's actually, the book of Deuteronomy is just called words. And that's because the Hebrew tradition is that one of the first important words at the beginning of the book is where the book gets its title. And so the first opening sentence of Deuteronomy says, these are the words that Moses spoke to all of Israel. And so because words is there at the beginning of the sentence, this book is just called Devarim, just called words. And I think that's kind of hilarious. Anyway, thanks for joining us today. Join us again tomorrow as we learn another Hebrew word.